This is You've Already Been Hacked, recorded on 29 May 2021. I hope everyone is having a restful, reflective Memorial Day weekend, at least for those in the United States. And for the rest of my listeners, I hope you're having a great and wonderful weekend as well. This past week, a federal watchdog agency found that while the cybersecurity insurance market boomed in recent years, rising premiums and struggles by some insurers to quantify the cost and losses that stem from cyber incidents remain some of the biggest obstacles to further adoption. The Government Accountability Office released a report on the 20th of May that looked at how the private cybersecurity insurance market is developing and has developed over the past 5 years, its growing use in different industrial sectors, and how the market is changing in response to this year of devastating and expensive cyber attacks. Data from at least one insurance broker shows that the cyber insurance market, at least from a client purchasing perspective, has doubled from 2016, now up to 47%. Overall, insurance companies seem to be responding to increased demand from clients for cyber-specific insurance, and in at least one survey, it was found that two things most likely are the reason that spur such a purchase of this type of insurance. One, when businesses are experiencing a cyber attack, and two, when they hear about other companies being hit by a cyber attack, not necessarily even in their sector, just something significant. What I hope will come as no shock to anyone that's listening to this podcast is that over the past 4 years, the education and healthcare sector has had the highest uptake of rates of cyber insurance, while hospitality and retail, two sectors that were forced to undergo some of the most dramatic changes to their IT operations in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, saw the most rapid growth. The figures suggest that the sectors that bore the full brunt of some of the worst cyber attacks of the pandemic were most likely to see the value of insuring specifically around cyber threats. So it should be of no surprise that healthcare and education are definitely adopting cyber insurance at a higher rate, as they were having their lunch proverbially taken for the past 12, going on nearly 18 months. Thank you, coronavirus. However, this is not all good news. Auditors are arguing that there is growing evidence that the mounting financial losses from years of payouts due to ransomware and other types of cyber criminal activity is taking its toll on insurers' pocketbooks, leading to have some of them reevaluate their coverage models. Despite the upward trend in companies opting for cyber insurance, auditors are concluding that the insurer appetite and capacity for underwriting cyber risk has contracted more recently, especially in certain high-risk industry sectors such as healthcare and education, and for public sector entities. So, very much like a stuntman, getting insurance may become far more complicated the more a sector actually is attacked. What a double-edged sword that is. Also in the GAO report, it concluded that some insurers may be struggling to develop cyber-specific coverage because they lack enough historical data to accurately estimate the costs of the plans they offer. And as this seemingly gets progressively worse and worse, the GAO believes that the federal government might even be obligated to cover some of the financial losses of insurers. An example of this in another area of care for the government is the Terrorist Risk Insurance Program, or TRIP, in the Department of Treasury, that requires the government to share some of the losses that private insurers incur in the event of a certified act of terrorism. So, auditors may be beginning to explore the extent that they can use TRIP and the 2002 Terrorist Risk Insurance Act and if they are structured appropriately, how they could be used and applied to cyber attacks or other cyber terrorism in the future. You may also see some lobbying occur to have some sort of equivalent trip for cyber on the Hill. More to follow on that if it becomes a thing that we end up seeing materialize. Sticking with the idea of cyber insurance or insurance in general, a Doncaster insurance company has been hit by ransomware from the Dark Side Hacking Collective, whose press release declaring it was shutting down its operations last week was taken at face value by some pundits. As reported on in the Doncaster Free Press, One Call Insurance, based in the northern English city, had been compromised by Darkside a week ago. In the paper, there is a quote from the Darkside gang saying, quote, "Welcome to the dark side." In the ransom note, it appears that the hackers stated that if they do not receive 15 million euros, the data that they have will be made public. That includes all customer data such as passwords and bank details. One Call has told the press that on the 13th of May, they began to experience some disruption to their IT systems and immediately hired a dedicated team of IT forensic specialists to help restore their systems and investigate what happened. This is something that we hear repeatedly over and over again, that it seems the majority of companies are responsive to a cyber event as opposed to being proactive with a cyber event. And that always being on the back heel like that is going to be far more challenging than not. Moving on. India's flag carrier, Air India, has admitted it fell foul of the data breach at an aviation information service provider. Acronym for them is SITA, SITA, and that its disclosure comes only 5 weeks after it was notified of the situation. In a statement posted from the airline, it stated that personal data for roughly 4.5 million of its customers was leaked when SITA revealed it had been breached in March of 2021. When it admitted the breach, SITA revealed the names of airline customers that had already informed that they had been compromised. Air India was not on the list SITA provided to the press back on the 5th of March, but the carrier posted its own notice on the 19th and stated that the airline's passenger service system provider has informed them about a sophisticated cyber attack that it was subjected to in the last week of February 2021. Air India did not name SITA in that particular statement. Their new statement, dated the 15th of May, does name SITA and says the airline was told its customers were among those in the leak on the 25th of March and on the 4th of April. Customers have now been told that the leaked data covered personal data registered between the 26th of August 2011 and the 3rd of February 2021. So just a decade's worth of compromise. Details included names, date of birth, contact information, passport information, ticket information, Star Alliance and Air India frequent flyer data, as well as credit card numbers and data. Of course it did. But if you're a glasses half full type of person, there's an upside in the fact that frequent flyer passwords were not lifted and that the CVC number on credit cards was also not held by SITA. This makes it less likely that those that took the data can make unauthorized online transactions, at least with those specific credit cards. Air India, to its credit, I guess, has recommended that its customers change their passwords for their frequent flyer points and all of their Air India related accounts. Let's move to some ground-based transportation. Toyota has disclosed subsidiaries suffered cyber attacks. Toyota has actually admitted to a pair of cyber attacks. The first hit the European operations of a subsidiary, a Daihatsu diesel company, a Toyota-owned company that designs engines. And in a statement dated the 16th of March, Daihatsu said it experienced a problem in accessing its file server in the internal system on the 14th of May. After they did a brief cyber investigation, they were informed that third parties, hackers, confirmed as the sole source of the issue. At the time of this podcast, it's unknown what type of information was compromised or who actually did the compromise. Across the pond, or continent, or landmass, whatever, numerous Japanese outlets, meanwhile, are reporting that Toyota subsidiary Auto Parts Manufacturing Mississippi has revealed a ransomware attack. The reports state that some financial and customer data was exfiltrated and exposed, a tactic that ransomware purveyors use all the time to gain leverage for whatever their demands are. Auto Parts Manufacturing Mississippi has not paid and was not disrupted by the attack, according to the reports. And these attacks are just on top of some other problems that Toyota has been having when it had to make a decision to halt 3 production lines in 2 plants back in June for a lack of parts, and just all the weird stuff that's happening in tech and manufacturing due to shortages and supply chain problems. So just throw this on top of the pile for them. I'm sure it's something they were just really looking forward to dealing with. The Transportation Security Administration, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security and is the one that's tasked with overseeing the security of oil and natural gas pipelines in the United States, has put in place new pipeline security, cybersecurity requirements as of this past Wednesday. The TSA order makes the first mandatory cybersecurity practices for pipelines and what some expect will be the first of more standards that the government puts in place to regulate how critical infrastructure operates and protects networks and systems. TSA has worked with CISA and Idaho National Labs to train personnel and says it will lean on CISA for advice moving forward with its cybersecurity requirements. Officials believe that TSA's continued work with pipeline operations has demonstrated a collaborative relationship they will be able to build upon as they take on a more regulatory role. The TSA is scheduled to conduct 52 total voluntary cybersecurity assessments of pipeline operations in 2021, 23 of which have already been completed. So good work. We're not necessarily at the half-year point, although we're just about there, and they're just about halfway done. So I think that's they're on time. I'll give them on-time award. And just for note, the TSA order is the first explicit regulatory move by the Biden administration for infrastructure. There is a history of regulation breeding better cybersecurity practices within critical infrastructure sectors, so this may actually spawn some healthy progress in securing some of our most important networks. And finally, a federal grand jury has charged an FBI employee with stealing classified documents and keeping them in her home between 2004 and 2017. The employee allegedly took documents that detailed the FBI's sources and methods that the Bureau uses to counter cyber threats, as well as those it uses in its counterterrorism and counterintelligence work, according to the indictment. Some of the documents detail specifics of investigations in multiple field offices, details on human sources, and gaps in intelligence about foreign intelligence services. The documents also detail technical capabilities the FBI uses in counterintelligence and counterterrorism work. Again, this is all in the indictment. Sadly, this is not the first time that trusted individuals within the government have taking information home that they were not authorized to take home in mass, and who knows who had access to it and who was doing what with it. This is not necessarily malicious insider threat. It is insider threat nonetheless, because that data is no longer in a secured environment. Even if the person had good intentions, it's really just not a positive outcome for anybody, and could lead to really damaging things. Now, if it was malicious, that will all come out, I'm sure, and that would be even worse. The FBI, for their credit, has long been concerned about insider threats, and in 2018 worked with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence to establish an updated framework meant to guide the U.S. government's National Insider Threat Task Force, or the NITTF. Just last month, the NITTF issued guidance on protecting against insider threats to critical infrastructure entities, including those with work touching on the U.S. electric grid, telecommunications, and hospitals. That's all for the news this week. I'm your professor of cyber risk. We'll talk again soon. If you like this podcast, share it with your colleagues and friends. Your support is how we are able to continue to make this content. Thank you.